very good afternoon, distinguished guests, speakers, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Roshni and I have the pleasure of being your MC today. On behalf of the Institute of South Asian Studies, ISAS, at the National University of Singapore, I welcome you to this afternoon's book launch and panel discussion titled Maritime Governance in South Asia. To start the proceedings, I would like to invite Professor C Rajamohan, Director, Visiting Research Professor, ISAS NUS, to deliver the opening remarks. Professor Mohan, please.
Good evening. Ambassador Keng, Executive Deputy Chairman, S Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Nanyang Technological University, distinguished members of the audience. We have a very special group of panelists who are going to speak on the book and on the Indian Ocean issues later. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this book launch and panel discussion. We are very grateful for Ambassador Keng for taking time off to join us this afternoon. Ambassador Wong, of course, he doesn't need an introduction here, but he served in South Asia. He's very familiar with both. He served as High Commissioner in India, non-resident ambassador to Pakistan, also accredited to Nepal. He was also the Secretary General of the ASEAN at a very critical moment where many of the issues today that are in play began to boil over to the surface. So thank you, sir, for coming here and to be part of this launch of this book. This afternoon we'll have two segments to the event. The first is the launch of the book by Dr. Jivanta Schottli. His book is titled Maritime Governance in South Asia, Trade, Security and Sustainable Development in the Indian Ocean. Jivanta is a visiting research fellow at the Institute for South Asian Studies. And after the launch of the book, we'll have a panel discussion on the broad themes raised by the book. South Asia as a region, of course, has 8 nations, a collective population of 1.7 billion, and occupies a landmass of nearly 2 million square miles. It's a region on the move. It's one of the fastest growing regions of the world today. It's also undergoing tremendous change internally, and as a result, I think today we see both the internal politics of the three South Asian countries, the intra-regional relationships, as well as the international relationships of South Asia are all undergoing a major transformation. I think in all this, I think one new element that has emerged is the maritime dimension. Because the South Asian states largely adopted an inward economic orientation for a long period of time after independence, that ceased to matter for a long time. But today, I think as South Asia takes to trading and becomes an important center of international trading, I think the seas are going to be once again very important and very consequential for South Asia. South Asia, as you know, is an inverted triangle that is jutting into the Indian Ocean. It's virtually a peninsula that is surrounded by seas, the gulfs, the bays, the straits of the Indian Ocean. South Asia has the great advantage of being at the crossroads of the Indian Ocean. I don't know if this is a mixed metaphor about roads on sea, like the Maritime Silk Road and Silk Road industrial belt. So, but the fact is, located at the center, I think both on the maritime side, on the land side, the subcontinent, the Indian subcontinent has always been a junction of sorts for different parts of Asia. South Asia is actually has a huge diaspora as well, I think, which is spread all over the world. Beyond the historic spread of the Indian culture and civilization, in the colonial age, that is the first stage of globalization, we saw a dramatic expansion of Indian capital and Indian labor all across the Indian Ocean, and today that plays a very, very significant role in this part of the world. More broadly, I think, in a cultural sense, the memories, the rituals, the monuments that come out of India's exchanges with the region today stand testimony to the centrality of the subcontinent in the Indian Ocean. Indian Ocean is also the ocean part of it, with a long coastline, is an important source of livelihood for a large number of people in South Asia, but it's also, I think, a place that is being divided by conflicts. Some of those conflicts have extended to the maritime domain, and I think we need more substantive regional cooperation in the maritime domain within South Asia, and how we develop that is going to be an important thing. The competition for resources, infrastructure, and naval capabilities is also growing in the region, so therefore the internal conflicts within South Asia tend to get magnified by the new dynamic at the international level, where the maritime issues have gained a new prominence. I think besides a common interest in tapping the ocean for resources, promoting global integration, South Asia also shares a vulnerability to huge challenges of human security. And I think I think in many ways South Asia is really the exemplar of the kind of challenges that we face on human security, and I think dealing with those, I think, is going to be a huge priority for most of us in the region. In a book, Dr. Schottli has brought together a number of perspectives from renowned policymakers and academics from across the region and beyond. The chapters show how deeply intertwined pressures for trade, security, and sustainable development have become in the Indian Ocean region. By highlighting the concept of maritime governance, the book also draws attention to various arrangements that do exist and also do not exist at this point of time to make the place a more safer and secure region. So we look forward to hearing views of Jivanta, as well as the very distinguished set of panelists, many of whom have occupied important positions of influence in their respective governments. South Asia has been bestowed with natural maritime advantages, but as I said, the challenge is to tend to balance the kind of opportunities that it has today in the maritime domain. As India engages more adroitly with its maritime neighborhood and beyond, and as China's maritime Silk Road takes shape, the importance of maritime governance itself has become very important, and the big questions are going to come. I think we've seen in the last few days, certainly at the Shangri-La dialogue, what kind of a role South Asia and other countries of the region, whether it is India or the littoral states of the Bay of Bengal, what kind of a role they're going to play. All those are going to come into discussion and discourse in the coming years. So therefore, let me conclude here with the initial remarks, and let me welcome Ambassador Yong once again to the forum, to the podium, and also thank him for gracefully accepting our invitation to launch this week. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Mohan. It is now my pleasure to invite Dr. Jivanta Schottli, Visiting Research Fellow, ISAS, NUS, and editor of the book Maritime Governance in South Asia, Trade, Security, Sustainable Development in the Indian Ocean, to introduce the publication.
Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends, thank you so much for coming today. As the editor of the book to be launched, allow me a few minutes before we turn to the speakers whom you've actually come to hear today, to listen to. First, I must express my gratitude to Ambassador Yong, who is our guest of honor, and to the eminent panelists who have so kindly agreed to be with us. Ambassador Yong is of course very well known. He has deep knowledge and experience of South Asia, but he also is very well versed in the topic of maritime security. So thank you very much for agreeing to launch this book on maritime governance in South Asia. Now this is a topic which I believe has preoccupied practitioners and scholars for a very long time. The basic problem in international relations of how to induce and institutionalize cooperation amongst actors of any kind. And this is the loose definition of governance that is applied in the book. How do you create regular and repeated patterns of interaction in an anarchic world? The problem, I believe, is even further compounded at sea, where issues of sovereignty and security are perhaps even harder to negotiate and to defend in comparison to those on land. Now, if we turn to South Asia specifically, there is an urgency and a tremendous opportunity for this region to contribute to this area of global governance, that is maritime governance. If we just look at the coastlines of Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Bangladesh, these are coastlines that provide livelihoods to many, many millions of fishermen. Now, much of this is conducted in the form of what is known as small-scale or artisanal fishing. And this, in fact, is now a way of life that is to be preserved under the new SDGs, the SDG Development Goal number 14. Now, this is a subject that will need coordinated action amongst the affected South Asian countries in the form of effective international lobbying. But fishing is, of course, also a very sensitive issue and a cause of bilateral friction between and amongst the South Asian countries. So how do you bring the countries together to fight for a common cause and overcome these problems that affect the bilateral relations? The need to move towards more effective and sustainable use of the vast ocean economy is something that countries all around the world are beginning to realize. India, through its ambitious Sagarmala program of developing ports and infrastructure, seeks to radically enhance the potential of its coastline economies. In fact, it is interesting to note that each of the states today in South Asia are investing in better usage of, or in the case of the landlocked countries, in gaining further access to maritime resources. And in this growing effort, the ability to leverage geography and location is of essence. So geopolitics is back big time, especially in the case of South Asia. And from my point of view, the location of South Asia at the center of the Indian Ocean is truly astounding and extraordinary. The Bay of Bengal and the Andaman Seas link this region to the world's most dynamic economies in the East and Southeast Asia. To the west, the Arabian Seas and the Persian Gulf continue to be a fulcrum for geopolitics. And with developments in the ports of Chabahar and Gwadar, we see multiple fault lines and fractures emerging that have to be carefully negotiated, as well as new prospects for regional connectivity. To the south, Sri Lanka is located literally at the crossroads of critical Indian Ocean sea lines of communication, and Sri Lanka has been active in promoting cooperation amongst all the South Asian littorals. Now in the book, the contributors have taken up a number of these issues pertaining to peace and conflict, trade and infrastructure, environment, and the blue economy. We have perspectives from South Asia, including, for example, a description and analysis by Rear Admiral Khurshid Alam from Bangladesh, who gives a very detailed description of the material put forward by Bangladesh to the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea to resolve the maritime conflict between India and Bangladesh successfully. Now, of course, the book is not exhaustive, and I'm sorry for the gaps that have been exposed, but I hope that these can be addressed in future projects. I would also like to point out that an effort was also made to include views from around the Indian Ocean, and I'm proud that we have someone from Tanzania, from the Seychelles, and from Indonesia, critical countries, especially from India's perspective with its growing oceanic outreach. Now, this oceanic outlook towards South Asia and also emanating from South Asia has prompted exciting new ideas and debates among strategists and scholars. This includes the much discussed and increasingly accepted use of the term Indo-Pacific, and of course India's articulation of a maritime vision in the form of Sagar, security and growth for all in the region. I'm sure these topics will come up in the discussion. And of course I'm extremely grateful and glad that we have with us Ambassador Shiv Shankar Menon, Ambassador Frank Lavin, Mr. Rahul Roy Chaudhary, Professor Alan Chong, especially in the wake of the recent Shangri-La dialogue, to debate with us these issues. Each of them brings to the table a veritable expertise in all areas of diplomacy, trade, security, and geopolitics. Before I end, I just have two more notes of appreciation. Since being in Singapore just for 2 years, and this topic is something that I have recently, since coming to Singapore, gained more appreciation of, it's really fascinating how palpable the issue of maritime governance is in Singapore. I have had the opportunity while in Singapore to visit the Singapore office of the Swiss global logistics company Kuehne + Nagel, and I'm grateful that the ambassador is also with us here today. And at this information center, you can witness the seamless analysis of live-time information gathered from across the world, showing how global trade is functioning right from your fingertips. In Singapore, there has also been the chance to interact with senior naval officers from India who regularly are deployed to this region. All of this have been experiences which enrich and inspire one's research. I would therefore like to end by expressing my gratitude to ISAS, to the leadership of Chairman Pillai, and now to the directorship of Professor Rajamohan, and of course to my colleagues and to everybody else for making this book possible and for today's event. Thank you very much, and I hope you'll enjoy the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schottli. It is now my pleasure to invite our guest of honor, Ambassador Keng Yong, Executive Deputy Chairman, S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, and Director, Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies, NTU, to deliver his address. Ambassador Ong, please.
First of all, good afternoon to all of you. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. J.Y. Pillay, my senior in the diplomatic service. And of course, we have Mr. Juma Boy, another senior Singaporean that I learned to respect. High Commissioner of India, Ambassador of Switzerland, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I was asked by Tommy Koh to stand here. He was my professor in law school. So when a professor says, I do, I do. Generally speaking, I don't like to make speeches in front of a lectern because I'm required to read something that I have to write. And my favorite way of delivering any commentary or make a statement is to speak off the cuff. So I'm told by Tommy, don't anyhow say anything, follow your script. And I was afraid to send my script to him to review because he's going to tell me, you must add this, you must add that. So I hope none of you report to him what I say today. Just say he do a great speech and yeah. But I'm happy to be here, not because Tommy asked me, but because this is ISAS, Institute of South Asian Studies, and this is a very important part of our think tank circles. And of course, we have good friends in ISAS, and most recently, Rajamohan has joined as the director of ISAS. Previously, we had Professor Mitra, whom I get along quite well, and of course, our author, editor of this book, Dr. Jivanta. So, what can I say to add to what the panel will have to say later? I met Mr. Shiv Shankar. He said, I only decide what I want to say after I hear you. So, you added more pressure on me, Mr. Menon. I cannot fool around anymore. No? Actually, my speech is full of anecdotes. Now I have to be a bit more intellectual because I have to bear responsibility for the panel discussion afterward. Maybe the starting point for me is to reiterate the role of Singapore. Singapore is geographically well located. From ancient times to modern day, we rely on the harbour to make a living. And until today, any maritime business or maritime governance issues are very important to us because the seaborne trade, the things that the ocean bring to us in Singapore are all very important. This means that the lines of communication, the sea lines of communication through the ocean must be open, safe and secure. Freedom of navigation is essential. Just now there was a reference to the Shangri-La Dialogue. It just concluded yesterday. Many of you probably attended it or heard about it on TV and radio or read about it in the newspaper. One of the major issues at the Shangri-La Dialogue is about cooperation in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. There is this thing called the Indo-Pacific concept. After spending one whole weekend, I don't think we got a clear definition of what it is. Just like the English language, you have the American version of English, the English version of English, and the Indian Ocean Pacific Cooperation, Indian Ocean Pacific Ocean Cooperation is not yet defined clearly in any of the dictionary. So we just have to wait. But I guess it's all about peace and security. And some of the delegations at the Shangri-La Dialogue have also added a big discussion on freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. All of you know the tension and the various doing and flowing in the South China Sea. So all these deliberations harp on who governs the oceans and what has been set up to protect the interests of major powers, littoral states, and island nations in all the vast oceans. One current worry is about the maritime resources in the ocean, how to ensure the sustainability of such resources for economic growth and improve livelihood of our people. I would add also, we must think about the global climate change and its impact. So you have heard what Dr. Jivanta referred to as goal number 14 of the UN Sustainable Development Goal. All these now have become very important, and I will talk about a bit more as I go along. In launching this book on governance, maritime governance in South Asia, I feel that it is a good opportunity to talk about what we call the blue economy today. Blue economy essentially is about conserving and sustainably using the ocean, the seas, the marine resources for sustainable development. Actually, this particular goal number 14 is quite innocuous. It simply states life below water. So, you know, all those 17 icons about the UN Sustainable Development Goal, each of them have an icon and one short line to accompany the icon. And goal number 14, which is about oceans, we simply have one picture of a fish and life below water. It's a huge domain of research, political debate, and so on. But it is important for all of us to bear this in mind. And Indian Ocean in particular, because this is one ocean that is now very much in the news, and we have to start acquainting ourselves with this concept of the blue ocean and what it means for all of us. Of course, there are territorial disputes in various parts of the ocean, and also all the other issues relating to things like congestion of sea lanes, illegal fishing, piracy, and so on and so forth. And wisely, many of the countries in the region established this thing called the Indian Ocean Marine Association, IORA. And IORA is located, the secretariat of IORA is based in Mauritius, and it has outlined various action plans to cover many of these issues which are of interest to all the countries in the Indian Ocean region. For example, we talk about maritime safety, trade and investment, fishery, disaster relief, academic science and technology cooperation, tourism and cultural exchanges, the blue economy, women's economic empowerment, and so on. All these are issues of the day when we need to talk about maritime governance in the Indian Ocean region. It's a very big agenda, and what is interesting for me is that we are now talking not only about the traditional security issue, peace and security, but there is a lot of focus on what we call non-traditional security issues, such as how to manage natural disaster, how to deal with cultural exchanges, and so on and so forth. Those of you who heard Prime Minister Narendra Modi's speech at the Shanghai Dialogue would appreciate some of these elements when you heard him talk about the entire Indian Ocean and the history of India, the Indian Ocean with the Pacific Ocean. And many of these things, what we call non-traditional security issues, are covered by that speech, and our discourse later today hopefully will deal with these kind of issues, because the ocean is not just about peace and security, not just about territorial dispute, but a lot more, as we now know, and people who are advocating the blue economy have been constantly reminding us that it's not just about sovereignty, it's not just about water, shipping, more has to talk about. Cooperation among neighboring countries is therefore fundamental in talking about maritime cooperation and governance. As you can imagine, all those countries around the Indian Ocean Rim, each of them have their own interests, and they need to find a way to work with their neighbors and those other powers who are interested in the Indian Ocean. Here, I'd like to remind ourselves that basically the constitution of the ocean, or the law of the sea, already is embodied in the UN Law of the Sea Convention. So as much as possible, we should try to follow what has been there in the UN Law of the Sea Convention and use that to achieve more global cooperation and hopefully more understanding on some of the technical issues covering the interests of different states in the Indian Ocean Rim, as well as the big powers, major powers having an interest in this big ocean. Greater cooperation and leadership in the region is really the need of the hour, and we must try to encourage more ways to get together to convey an understanding of the issues involved and how to go about resolving the differences. In this respect, again, I'd like to draw attention to Prime Minister Modi. His recent visit to Indonesia is a very important part of the regional diplomacy, and I note that the two countries, India and Indonesia, are now talking about working more closely and working together to develop the suitable infrastructure for more maritime cooperation, especially in the northern part of the Indonesian archipelago, which is part of the Indian Ocean and part of the Bay of Bengal. So, for the first time, I had to look at a map to find out where is this place called Saban Island. Yeah, how far away, or how close it is to Indian territory coming out from Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So it is really very, very close, and India is not that far away. If you look at such kind of maritime boundaries. In connection with this launch today, I asked my colleague to find a bit more information about what else is there apart from trade and infrastructure in the Indian Ocean. And she found this idea of the Ocean Compact, Healthy Ocean for Prosperity. I believe one of the writers in the book, one of the essays, touched on this also. It is about how, we need to look at the health of the ocean itself, because we take it for granted that fish and other marine creatures will survive in the ocean. But actually nowadays, the water may be so contaminated that no fish can survive. Today, for those of you who read the Straits Times, you see a picture of a whale that had been picked up by some fishermen, and the stomach of the whale was filled with 80 plastic bags. No wonder the whale died of hunger, because the whale must have thought that this was food, and it wasn't food. So Tommy Goh, in his introduction to the book, also talked about this huge Indian Ocean garbage patch. And it is quite frightening. The garbage patch, according to Tommy, in his introduction, measured 5 million square kilometers. From what Rajamohan said just now about the landmass of South Asia, this garden patch is almost the size of South Asia, no? You say square kilometer, no, you say square mile, I have the information here, square kilometer. 5 million square kilometer, maybe about 2 million plus square mile of landmass in the subcontinent of India. I think can fit into this 5 million square kilometer of garbage patch. This patch consists of rubbish, particularly plastic, moved from one part of the Indian Ocean to another part, and then when they reach Australia, they come back this other way. So I do not know what we're going to do with this terrible contamination of the ocean, but definitely it would destroy the health of the ocean. And in this particular study called the Ocean Compact, Healthy Ocean for Prosperity, launched by the UN Secretary General in August 2012, we touch on this very frightening prospect and how the population of the world will be affected by such kind of indiscriminate waste disposal into the ocean. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I thought that we should remind ourselves of how the Indian Ocean actually brought the nations of the Indian Ocean Rim together. We are quite interdependent, and we need to find a way to keep this huge space, the Indian Ocean, open and safe for further interaction, and to safeguard the food security and the regional stability as well as peace for all our people. In the book, Dr. Jivanta put it into 5 categories. You have institution, leadership, order, and future prospect. But when I look at this, I want to say that institutions are important, order is important, rules are very important, and more importantly, accommodation among all the countries of the Indian Ocean Rim, as well as those outside the Indian Ocean but having tremendous interest in the Indian Ocean. So I talk about IORA, Indian Ocean Rim Association. My takeaway for all of you is to remember IORA as IORA, I for institutions, O for order, R for rules, and A for accommodation. So those of you who meet your IORA friend, you tell them IORA stands for institution, order, rules, and accommodation. And as you deliberate this book and the content later on, maybe you can think more about this, how to create more institutions, how to maintain order, what kind of rules should we use. I talk about the UN Law of the Sea Convention, and really, most importantly, what kind of accommodation we have to make for each other, because we are big and small country, and we have big and small powers, and not so small powers that aspire to be big, and so on and so forth. So if we don't accommodate one another, we definitely will have a very troublesome Indian Ocean, and this will not be good for all of us, whether we are in the Indian Ocean Rim or outside. Thank you very much for your attention.
you, Ambassador Ong. We will now proceed to the official launch of the book. I would like to invite Professor C Rajamohan, Dr. Jivanta Schottli to join Ambassador Ong on stage for the launch.
Oh, okay. Leave it up.
We shall launch the book now. Dr. Schottli will now present a copy of the book to our guest of honor, Ambassador Ong. We'll have a group photograph for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now proceed for a tea reception that will be out of the ballroom. So please be back by 2:55 p.m. for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Great. How are you?